All right. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the ASEAN Study Center, thank you for joining the session. Welcome all, and welcome back to our Ambassadorial Lecture in 2021, presented by the ASEAN Study Center from the Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Gadjah Mada. My name is Jusnul, and I am Program Division Intern at ASEAN Study Center, and I will be here today as the Master of Ceremony. And thank you very much for attending. Today, His Excellency Ambassador Ashraf Muhammad Moghib Sultan, as the Ambassador of the Arab Republic of Egypt to the Republic of Indonesia, the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, and ASEAN, will be our speaker for the Ambassadorial Lecture. All right, before we start, I'd like to inform all the participants of today's session. If you have any question for Ambassador Ashraf, please write your question in the comment section on YouTube. And we will raise the question during Q&A session. All right, to start the ambassadorial lecture, I'd like to welcome Mr. Dafri Akusalim that will lead us to the introduction to our speakers as well as to preach the discussion. Dr. Dafri Akusalim is the Executive Director of the ASEAN Study Center, and he is a senior lecturer at the Department of International Relations at Universitas Gadjah Mada. His area of expertise are in the issue of ASEAN cooperation, human rights, and environment. So without further ado, Mr. Dafri, the time is yours. I'm sorry, Mr. Dafri. I think you're still muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, host Knowles. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and viewer at home. Thank you very much for your participation in today's lecture. Today, I have the honors to welcome and guide the discussion we will be having with the Ambassador of Egypt to ASEAN Indonesia, His Excellency Ambassador Ashraf M. Sultan. Good afternoon, Ambassador.
Good afternoon, Dr.
Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. To inform our viewer that we are joining us today, the Ambassador Lecture is a lecture we hold to discuss strategic ASEAN issue from the point of view of an ambassador. We hold these discussions on regular basis actually. And today we will be discussing ways that ASEAN has and will be collaborating with Egypt as an important partner and a North African nation. What we hope to discuss today are the emerging challenges, opportunities, and the future plans to continue strengthening partnership between ASEAN and Egypt. We also hope to take a look at some of the most strategic cooperation between the two regions and how the pandemic has affected the implementation of some of the initiatives. To lead the discussion, I would like to introduce to you the Ambassador of Egypt to ASEAN and Indonesia, Excellency Ambassador Ashraf M. Sultan. His Excellency Ambassador Ashraf Muhammad Moghib Sultan started his diplomatic career from 1991 as a diplomatic attaché at the Institute of Diplomatic Studies. During his diplomatic career, he also became the Deputy Assistant Minister for International Relations Office and a member of Disarmament Divisions and Commonwealth Division. He served as a junior diplomat at the Embassy of Arab Republic of Egypt in Abidjan, in Manila, Philippines, in Tokyo, Japan, in several bureaus until he became the Chancellor at the Embassy of Arab Republic of Egypt in Moscow, Russia. In 2010, His Excellency joined the National Steering Bureau for the implementation of the Association Agreement and Action Plan with the European Union. In 2012, he served as a Minister Plenipotentiary, Deputy of Mission of Embassy of Arab Republic of Egypt in Madrid, Spain, and then in 2016, Ambassador, spokesperson for the Prime Minister, Cabinet Minister, Ministers. Sorry. In 2018, His Excellency served as Ambassador and Deputy Assistant Minister for Europe Affairs, and in 2020 until now become the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to Republic of Indonesia, the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, and Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So, Ambassador Ashraf Sultan, I present you the floor now.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate your kind introduction. Dr. Dafri Agus Salim, Executive Director of the ASEAN Studies Center, University of Gada Mada, distinguished guests and participants, I would like to start to thank the ASEAN Studies Center at Gada Mada University for giving me this opportunity to speak about Egypt's ASEAN relations and sharing with the audience some remarks that came to my attention on this issue during my stay at Jakarta as Ambassador of Egypt to Indonesia, as well to the Association of ASEAN. I also would like to thank the audience for their participation. Please allow me to start by giving you brief remarks about what happened in Egypt lately after some political disturbances in 2011 and 2013 that showed the need to economic and social reforms to change many constants and introduce new practices. Egypt adopted in 2016 economic and social reform measures, including flotation of the currency, measures to boost investment, especially in Upper Egypt and the economic zone of Suez Canal, adjusting energy prices to reflect market conditions, and strengthening the social safety net by restructuring social subsidies and introducing new family programs. Economic reforms also included new mechanisms and allowed the contribution of private sector and investors as partners in operating in some public services, as well as some regulations concerning regulatory roles for government agencies on tariff licensing and dispute resolutions. The package of reforms helped creating jobs and revitalization the economy. They boosted the competitiveness of Egyptian businesses, support export growth, attract new foreign investments, and enable public resources for parity growth and social programs, and supported incomes for the poor. In addition to increasing efficiency of the state apparatus, tax reforms, and public spending, mega projects were implemented to update and upgrade infrastructure and services, energy, transportation networks, tourism, agriculture, irrigation system, water, sanitation, and supply, public housing and urban developments, telecommunication, petrochemicals are among the sectors that were subject to significant upgrade in the last few years. Allow me just to briefly mention few examples just to make the full picture clearer of some success stories in Egypt. And I am saying this just to say that during our progress, we need to not just look ourselves, but also to look at others. So this is why I am maybe mentioning some information about Egypt, because to my guess, I think some of the participants may not be fully aware of what was happening in Egypt lately. Egypt jumped to the 77th position in 2020 from the 144 positions in 2018 in getting energy sub-index of the World Bank's Doing Business, reflecting progress achieved in the electricity sector in a very short period. The integrated sustainable energy strategy illustrates Egypt's long-term plan to broaden its energy mix. The strategy targets the production of 20% of electricity from renewable sources by 2022 to 55% by 2035 and to reach 61% by 2040. Additionally, Egypt is currently exploring the feasibility and prospects of green hydrogen production projects. The potential of solar and wind farms in Egypt, therefore, are very promising, and investments opportunities are multiplying. This follows several policies encouraging renewable energy. Such reforms are attracting investments from the private sector, as illustrated by Egypt's $2 billion US dollar landmark project. It's Bin Ban Solar Park, which was recognized as the top World Bank project. Such developments allowed Egypt to be considered as an export hub for electricity with production surplus. In a gas and oil sector, more than 2,295 oil and natural gas discoveries were made possible, including Zohr gas field, which is 2.7 billion square feet per day. It is the largest in the country and the Mediterranean, and a big addition to Egypt's resources on gas. On transportation section, Egypt seeks to integrate more fully into global value chains. The development of transport infrastructure is a vital part of the country's long-term growth. The government has made investments in the transport sector a priority in an effort to increase foreign trade, to reduce urban congestion and pollution, and provide better services. Mega projects for updating train and metro networks and roads to improve connectivity, in addition to upgrading ports and services. We also targeted education, since it was a big challenge in Egypt. Our education system is the largest in the region of Middle East. From kindergarten to year 12, enrollment stood at over 22.7 million students for the academic year 2018-19. Approximately 2.3 million students join the system annually. This is a huge burden that required a number of initiatives, most of which were aimed at increasing uptake of technology in classrooms and ultimately creating a dramatic cultural shift in the way society views education. This initiative will be fully implemented by 2030, replacing country's traditional culture of memorization for tests with one focus on student-centered teaching and completely based learning for life, alongside mastery of technology. Egypt also started implementing a comprehensive health insurance program to provide free health care for all. 3 years ago, Egypt succeeded to invent a final cure for the epidemic Hepatitis C, and this was a pure Egyptian technology. Millions of Egyptian people were treated by the new cheap drug. Social care programs were restructured to focus more on most vulnerable people and women's health and empowerment. New administrative capital is built and ready to move in. In addition to 14 totally new cities are under construction from zero. Mega projects in the tourism sector, including improvement of sites and services, as well as museums. Next year will be inaugurated the Grand Museum of Cairo that costs $1.2 billion as an example of these mega projects. We also focused on digitalization. Egypt have embarked on ambitious national project we call Digital Egypt. This means having individuals who are ready to use technology safely, efficiency, and to its maximum potential. It means having institutions that are capable of adopting technology to achieve gains and efficiencies. Digitalization efforts achieved many successes in governmental areas, and especially in public services. This sector is actually growing fast, 17% last year. These programs also included adopting steadfast measures to continuously develop digital payments and launching a new phase of financial inclusion. The new design of the financial system seeks to waive the transactions of individuals and enterprises into countries' formal economic fabric and ensure that the development of financial institutions will provide them with a wider range of tailored services. Here, it is also important to mention that non-formal economy in Egypt is equal to 50% of GDP or more. It is estimated that it gives jobs to 4 to 5 million workers. The plan is to include this to the formal system by adopting a number of policies and financial inclusion. Now, let me move to the main subject, Egypt and ASEAN relations. First, it could be important to have a general look on how bilateral relations between Egypt and ASEAN countries look like. And I will only talk on this point to just briefly describe the current situation. Politically, relations are very positive, no disputes or negative backgrounds. Instead, there is mutual understandings on international issues and usually a good level of consultation and coordination within UN and its bodies and other multilateral organizations. However, this was not translated through the years to sustainable, solid economic ties. In 2020, Egypt exports to ASEAN countries is about 386.5 million US dollar, which is less than 1.5% of Egypt's export to the world. And this is the same percentage of Egypt imports from ASEAN that reached only $2.88 billion by 2020, comparing with the total ASEAN exports to the whole world. Mutual investments are also very low. These figures do not reflect the true potentials that both sides possess, nor the actual good political relations between them. During the last decades, both sides managed to achieve levels of economic growth and certainly developed economic sectors while still working towards sustainable and comprehensive development. To my understanding, this theoretically opens gate to more potential cooperation, provided we reach the right mechanisms and formulas. Egypt and ASEAN countries has signed a number of bilateral legal agreements as frameworks to develop relations. Maybe some of them need to be updated, but most importantly, they should be practically fully implemented. If I continue speak relation with ASEAN association, the issue is Egypt appointed the first Egyptian ambassador in Indonesia accredited to the association in 2011. Later on, Egypt signed the agreement of cooperation and friendship in September 2016. Then there were several meetings to discuss the idea of upgrading the level of relation with ASEAN association to a sectoral dialogue partner. However, ASEAN does not impose a specific model for joint cooperation with countries wishing to raise the level of relations. It was noted that Egypt would present a strategic plan for cooperation that includes clear initiatives that can be implemented. The final decision on raising Egypt's relations to a sectoral dialogue partner depend on the cooperation program that Egypt will present within a clear strategic vision on how to develop its relationship with it. It is customary for the country that wants to develop its membership with the organization to present a cooperation matrix or a short and medium strategy for the areas and initiatives that it considers important to activate with the organization. ASEAN will evaluate these proposed programs in line with political relations between Egypt and ASEAN countries, and also by determining whether these programs are consistent with the objectives of development priorities in ASEAN countries in technical and economic fields. Egypt and ASEAN similar goals and challenges. ASEAN countries had achieved an average economic growth of 5.2% in 2018. The service the service sector represents around 50% of the GDP, while industry around 37% and agriculture around 10%. As for Egypt, GDP has reached 5.8% in 2019 and 3.8% in 2020, despite the tragic consequences of COVID-19. Egypt's economic growth is expected to pick up to 4.9%, at least in the fiscal year 2021-2022, according to the latest Regional Economic Prospects report published by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Composition of the composition of Egyptian economy is quite similar to ASEAN countries in general. As in 2020, services remains the main share in GDP with 51.65%, followed by industry 31.8%, then agriculture 11.5%. I noticed that despite the GDP growth in both Egypt and ASEAN through the last 10 years, the share of growth of each sector did not change much. My basic remark will be that we need to develop our own knowledge and know-how to overcome national challenges and be able to make steps forward. It is predicted in some international finances institutions that Egypt, as well as some ASEAN economies, would become among the biggest economies in the world by 2050. This can happen if we can face the challenges and keep the momentum that we gain. We should not look to GDP as an absolute figure. To meet the goal of sustainable development, we should keep working on enhancing the economy competitiveness and our capabilities to face challenges. This cannot be done without expanding relations with other regions in volume and quality. Economic trends in Egypt and ASEAN goes towards moving to diversifying economy composition, not only developing traditional sectors but also introducing new technologies to many sectors, raise its competitiveness such as renewable and clean energy, electronics, climate smart agriculture and food industry, information and communication technology, heavy industries, digital economy, creative economy, besides services including transportation, banking services, and sustainable tourism. The common goal is to achieve a competitive, balanced, diversified, and knowledge-based economy, characterized by justice, social integration, and participation with a balanced and diversified ecosystem. But the ambitious plans for diversifying and strengthening the economy are challenged by national capabilities, natural resources, and the need to increase power consumption and face population growth and the constant need to develop infrastructure and urban expansion. It is also required to overcome technical and financial issues of different nature, as well as adapting with international standards and practices regarding environmental problems and best practices. I would say that pandemic COVID-19 added new challenges. The pandemic had its social and economic consequences worldwide. The problem reminded us of not neglecting the permanent goal of sustainable development, which is securing the welfare of our citizens and the quality of services provided to them. This crisis may have pushed some countries to redefine their priorities and prioritize investments in some domains. It is also confirmed it is also confirmed the necessity to master new digital tools since we are heading towards digitalization. Therefore, I would say there is need for ASEAN countries and Egypt to start developing and creating their own knowledge and know-how to develop their national capabilities to enter new markets and have more input and contribution to the world's scientific and technical progress as well. Egypt and ASEAN countries had already adopted these common goals within their local programs and strategies and achieve varying levels of success. It could be useful to find an appropriate format for extending cooperation, exchanging knowledge and best practices. In my opinion, there could be possible mechanisms for qualitative bilateral exchange with ASEAN countries. First point is establishing more communication between non-governmental actors, business community, educational institutions, and research centers, promoting people-to-people exchange and use programs, defining areas of interest for both sides, adopting common and tailored programs for scientific research and technical cooperation for specific targets with the contribution of private sector, promoting mutual and common investments and joint venture production, and exploring ways to promote investments to non-traditional sectors in economy, updating bilateral legal frameworks and focusing on facilitating technical cooperation, exchange of best practices, enhancing common capability to face pandemics and natural disasters. Egypt can be partner to Indonesia and ASEAN countries as a gate for the huge market of Africa and Middle East region, taking into consideration some elements such as the existing legal framework agreements for free trade that we already signed between Egypt and these two big regions, taking into consideration that these are huge developing market with diversified need of products and qualities. The geographical location of Egypt within Africa, Middle East, and Europe, in addition to Suez Canal as important maritime and trade corridor, facilities and logistics presented by the Suez Canal Economic Zone for foreign investors according to highest international standards. The zone contributes to the transformation of Egypt into a global industrial and commercial economic and logistical hub that impacts supply and global value chains. The implementation of business environment reforms. The European Bank reports cites increasing competition, improving governance, combating corruptions, advancing digitalization, and promoting inclusion as key steps to attract investors. Regulatory reforms that Egypt adopted recently that opens the door for local and international investors to contribute and operate public projects and services. Transport networks that Egypt is developing locally between production centers and land and maritime ports within Egypt and also with African continent, including a highway reaching South Africa. But also, ASEAN is very important to Egypt. It is for Egypt a huge direct market with growing capabilities. ASEAN can be a model for a successful and stable association for regional cooperation. It gains even more importance after regional treaties which integrate 16 countries with a diversified economic system. It is estimated that with the implementation of the economic partnership, the population become 3 of the population would become 3.4 billion people, representing 48% of the world's population, and a total of GDP of 25.53 trillion US dollar, representing 31% of the world's GDP, and an estimated trade rate of $5.1 trillion or 29% of global trade rate. Opportunities to profit from technical exchange in many domains are also tempting, including digital economy, some mechanical industries, and machineries. It is important for more direct investments and exploring the capability of targeting third parties. New investments opportunities for Egyptian investors will be facilitated. But having said so, I can speak about some challenges that I personally remarked from my work here in Indonesia. Uh, it is not challenges regarding the. It is not challenging that will stop our countries from developing, but it is challenges that will slow down the cooperation between ASEAN and Egypt. The way I see it, there is a lack of communication between private sector in Egypt and ASEAN countries, in addition to an insufficient exchange of information about economic and social developments in both sides. The need to promote human resources and capability building in both sides to match sustainable development targets and introducing high-tech investments. There is also insufficient direct air transportations, whether to normal traveler people or even to cargo. There is need for financial tools and resources in a in a in a in a new tracks. There is also bureaucratic regulations and non-official trade barriers and unclear regulations in some cases. And it is also to be mentioned that there is in both regions competitions from other regions. But I say so, and I truly believe that there is a lot of potentials in the relations between uh, Egypt and ASEAN in general, uh, as both are developing economies and both are looking forward for more. There be big room for technical cooperation, for unusual fields of cooperation. It should not be traditional ways that we should focus on trade and direct cooperation, because when we expand relations, we also expand investments and trade all the way. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope I could give you a brief pictures about the topic. I will conclude just by confirming uh, that there is these challenges should be addressed, and we need to accomplish more to give a new push to Egypt ASEAN relations in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you for very comprehensive and interesting points, Ambassador. Yeah. Uh, Again, it's really interesting to have kind of different views, from the different countries that usually, have kind of uh, close, relationship with the ASEAN. Now, let me underline some of the important points, already mentioned by the ambassador. So, ambassador already explains, the basis of the Egypt's policy on ASEAN, actually the close relationship with the uh, domestic reform and domestic right happens in 2011 and 2013. The reforms, mostly on the social and economic aspects, how Egypt, have a program to the future, like promote energy production with based on the green energy, and also how to focus on the reform on educations, and social welfare, focusing on the effort to uh, increase the welfare of the people of Egypt. Now, the the reform also mentions about the what the future's plans of Egypt, already done so far, in relation to increase the economic development, like uh, the need to tourism, for example, and also how to create more jobs in Egypt, and also the uh, many other aspects, like infrastructure, how Egypt tries to making kind of integrated transportations, globally, in order to again, to support the economic plans of Egypt. Now, of course, also Ambassador mentioned some of the opportunities, like for example, it is a good the relationship between Egypt and ASEAN so far is okay, no problem at all. Politically, no conflicts, But in terms of economics, yes, the economic relationship is going on, but it's not maximal, maximal yet. According to ambassador here, that the portions of the uh, what you trade share of Egypt to ASEAN is quite small, right? 8%, if I'm not mistaken, So, and also the investments, in both sides, very slow. Um, there are already some agreements, between ASEAN countries and Egypt, but some of them now have not been implemented yet. So in the future, Egypt thinking to how to create more implementables, agreements, in sectors, specific sector, especially in the surface industry and agriculture. So uh, there are some of the problem mentioned by the or challenges actually, mentioned by ambassador. The first one is, let's say, uh, there's kind of lack of communications, between the both side actually, not only within and state, but especially, between business and business, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so this wise, in the future, ambassadors are not supposed to increase or support the intense communication between people to people contact, for example, and also business to business. And also, there's a problem of transportations, between ASEAN and Egypt in relation to make the trade, for example, in such a way. And also, the ambassador also noted about the problem of bureaucratic problem, bureaucratic problem. It's always, happens, between the ASEAN countries and in other countries like in Australia or other countries. So this is also need to reform, according to the uh, ambassador. And ambassador already recognized that the ASEAN is provide a kind of a good opportunity for Egypt's, products. Since the ASEAN is a big market, currently in the 5 or 10 years to come. So I think that's some of the point that ambassador already mentioned, and uh, I think this is very interesting, and it is good to be discussed, in this opportunity. So now I will open the question and answers sessions, and I believe we have a few participants who who wish to join this virtual discussion too. So once again, if you have a question, you can write it in the chat room. So please.
Well,
All right.
I
Okay.
I can see a question about is there a particular ASEAN member state or a few member states that Egypt shares the most similarity with, if any, in which aspect? Thank you. Well,
Yep.
this is a good question.
Yeah.
I will focus actually on Indonesia because I know much about Indonesia than the other ASEAN states because of the nature of my being here. Uh, there is many similarities between Egypt and Indonesia's.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for example, the composition of the economy, as I mentioned in my speech, is much quite similar. Uh, Both countries need to expand industry, both countries need to expand scientific work and research to be able to expand the economy. Both countries have this problem, for example, for confronting investments, sometimes that vocational training is needed. Sometimes uh, there is need to high tech specialist in some fields, and this can be a challenge. I can also the composition of the society in Egypt and Indonesia is uh, is quite similar. We have a majority Muslim society and other religions and other groups, and and this is quite similar to Egypt. I wouldn't say this is any challenge, but I would say this needs social justice and religious issues to be adequately addressed. So economically and politically and socially, I think there is similarity. We both regionally, Indonesia and Egypt work on the stability of our region, work on political coherence, work on to have integration within our regions. Uh, Sometimes there is difficulties, uh, but the same principle applied here in Indonesia and Egypt are the same. So there is also the political challenges that I did not mention in my speech. I focused on economic issues.
Yeah.
But the way I see it is I mentioned in my speech that some international institutions are forecasting that Egypt and Indonesia will be among 10 big economies in the world by 2050, and this is will not come in an easy way. If this was to come, should be with a more comprehensive and creative solutions. We need really to push things, and the way I see it is sometimes we only look to big nations to
Mm.
have the assistance, but
Yep.
we can do many things together if we put our hands together. Uh, 3 years ago, Egypt invented a treatment for hepatitis C. As I mentioned, it was a pure technological invention of Egypt. It is very cheap, and we started even
Right.
exporting this to many Western countries,
Yeah.
and it was a quite dramatic change, dramatic positive change to this industry. So there is success stories we can build upon, and when we have success stories, it opens the gates to more cooperation. And the issue is that we have to find the right formula, the right
Yeah.
mechanisms to do this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ambassador, and also Mbak Yulida, for the questions. And I'm quite agree with the statement made by the ambassador that in order to take a kind of lesson learned, we can do it not just from the big country, but also from the other country which is relevant to the issue that we are facing. Thank you, Ambassador. And now we give another, yeah. Now we have another question, Ambassador, from Lucky Cardanardi. Can you say it?
Yes, I
Yeah.
as the neighbors of China, the question is, as the neighbors of China, we are concerned about China-U.S. rivalry to maintain our centrality.
Mm-mm.
As a non-bloc country in the Cold War, do you have advice for ASEAN countries? Well, the main advice that is to keep uh, ASEAN centrality. Actually, when I first came here and I started to look out the ASEAN general policies, and it it come to my attention that the issue is to have a gradual and progressive effort towards political coherence and stability, and this will be the base for economic cooperation. If you cannot have political coherence and you cannot have common political ground, you it will be very difficult to achieve economic uh, cooperation. I mean, in a deep way. So what ASEAN is doing now is I guess the best advice. It's already been done, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you, Ambassador. Once again, I think that this is another good question from Lucky. Due to the what do you call it? The uh, historical notes, about the role of the Egypt and Indonesia played during the Cold War. Is quote unquote the leader of non-bloc or non-alignment movement at that time. All right. Now we move to another question, please. Any other question? Uh, if not, may I ask some questions,
Sure.
Ambassador? Yeah. I'm just interested to know how the relationship between Indonesia and Egypt, especially uh, developed in the last, let's say, 50 years or more, based on more on the social and cultural aspect. So, do you think that this kind of basis for good relationship between Egypt and Indonesia can be maintained or developed in the future? Okay.
Yes, of course. Look, as I mentioned, we have excellent political relations,
Mm,
and we have also excellent political dialogue. Politically, there is coordination and uh,
mm,
and consultations all the time in many subjects. Actually,
yeah.
it's a continuous effort, and this is not today. This is since beginning of relations between the two countries. And
Mm,
as you know, we were at some time partners at the non-alignment movement. Uh, we still share the same views with Indonesia
mm,
when it comes to non-alignment movement, when it comes to Islamic Conference Organization, when it comes
yeah. Yeah.
to international issues. Uh, and bilaterally, things are going very well. Uh, as there is no negative issues in our bilateral
Mm,
relations politically, but there is need to develop economic ties.
yeah.
uh, there is need to consolidate. I can figure that at some time, both countries were must engaged in local issues and in local development and to
Yeah.
build the infrastructure to develop the economy, to strengthen the economy, and this was the main focus. But now I think since we are achieving positive things, Indonesia is among the G20.
Yeah.
So Indonesia is moving forward. Egypt also, Egypt, despite it's not a G20 country, but we are also moving forward. We are also trying uh, to do something qualitative. So, in my opinion, uh, there is there is for example, digital economy, one of the fields that we are very interested to deal with Indonesia with it. It we have a very ambitious plans. Our cooperation can be in first of all best practices. We copied some of your practices. We made a little bit of studies on some cases in Indonesia, and the embassy sent it to back to Cairo to address them, to study them. So we are trying to open the dialogue between authorities here and here to learn from each other.
yeah,
Uh, you have developed software, you have developed the economics of
yeah,
the issue. This is what we can learn from you, and we are growing very fast. As I said, this is a sector that is growing 17% per year. So I guess this will enable us to openly cooperate
mm,
with Indonesia. We have the same issue of financial inclusion of
mm,
the what we say gray economy or black economy.
yeah, yeah,
It's a huge part of our economy in Egypt, and we need to include it on in our formal economy and in our financial system. This is a big effort. Indonesia has its own also. That you did your homework on this issue as well. So there is a lot to share. There is a lot to learn from each other. Uh, if we manage, for example, to put the non-formal economy into the formal economy, this will give us a very big push. If we manage to support the startups and the small and medium enterprises, this is a very big push. And when we speak about this, we need to say that we need to put them on the right track with the right tools to work. We should give them the support they need, whether when it comes to digitalization, whether when it comes to uh, financial issues, loans and services.
mm,
Uh, Also, when I spoke about bureaucracy and developing the governmental services, we started digitalizing some governmental services. Now
yeah,
it can be done online, as Indonesia is doing. Uh, but there is more to be done, and there is complications, and there is
yeah,
challenges. There is financial challenges, technical challenges,
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
So, so you see, there is plenty of areas
yeah,
that we can speak about it with between us, between Indonesia and Egypt.
yeah,
Uh, and these are, in my opinion, the trends of
yeah,
to drive the economy now.
yeah,
Uh, they are and they are eligible to significant growth. So chances are there.
Okay, Ambassador, thank you very much. I'm also agree, that in the future relationship with Indonesia and Egypt, not solely based on the, let's say, quote unquote, historical legacy, like the political aspect and also social cultural aspect, but also need to be developed in the economic aspect, and especially as Ambassador said, uh, by increasing the services. We know that the Egypt is one of the country with the potential, a great potential with tourism, right? So many places, to visit, and we read it in a book, long, long ago, in uh, junior high school, in the senior high school, we know that the Egypt is a good place to visit. But uh, we know that Indonesia, for example, end up a bit unaware about this opportunities, So this why if we read in newspaper, for example, most of the Indonesian people visit Mecca or Jeddah and then go to Turkey or other places. I think it's time, that all the Hajj, to go to Egypt, to visit Egypt. All right. So thank you very much for the enlightening, of all of the participants today, Egypt. I believe this is all the time we have for today's lectures. On behalf of the ASEAN Study Center, I would like to sincerely thanks to you for your time and for your being here today, today, Excellency Ambassador. We hope to be able to have more discussion alike today in the near future. I think this is a first step, for the future good cooperation between ASEAN Study Center, especially in the Embassy of the Egypt in Jakarta. Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, viewer of your participants. And I apologize if there are things that are wrong and not pleasing to all ladies and gentlemen. I return the floor to MC. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mm. All right. Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey, for moderating the session. And also, thank you very much again for the very insightful discussion with our speakers, His Excellency Ambassador Ashraf Sultan. I'm sure there are a lot of key takeaways that can be learned and reflect from today's discussion. So for all the participants, thank you for joining. Please stay tuned to our social media to get to know more about ASEAN and participate in our future event. Again, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at ASEAN Study Center and our Instagram at AAC UGM. To receive your certificate, don't forget to fill out the evaluation form that will be shared. Okay, all right. Again, thank you for joining today's discussion. I'm Jusno. See you on the next event. Thank you.